The funding portal was really a project born out of or is a brainchild between the CPC and our team after we really identified that there's a massive gap between the actual funding that is allocated through, that non-dilutive, non-repayable grants and the actual recipients of the ultimate intended funding wallet. So, in order to bridge that gap, the CPC and Ryan came together to develop really two systems. Number one is called the Fund Search. It's an easy to use digital tool that was designed for the pork producers and processors to find, apply for, and then secure government funding by matching their projects to the right programs.
Welcome to the Swine Canada podcast show, brought to you by Wisenetics. We are dedicated to bringing you the latest insights and discussions in the Canadian pork industry. I'm Miranda Smit, and I'll be the host for today's episode. And today we have not one, but two guests on the show. So I'm delighted to welcome to the show Katerina Kolemishevska, who is the Associate Executive Director at the Canadian Pork Council, and Alexandria Shannon, who is the Senior Product Manager for Grants, Credits, and Incentives Software at Ryan. So they're going to tell us all about the new digital national platform for investment support for pork producers. But before we get started on that, can you both please introduce yourselves and tell us a bit about your background and your current role? And let's start with Katerina.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Katerina Kolemishevska, Associate Executive Director and Director of Policy at the Canadian Pork Council. My experience mostly focuses on economic diversification, sustainability, and environmental stewardship. My background is in agriculture and rural development. I have quite a lot of experience working for international agriculture organizations, and after 17 years back here in Canada to support our agriculture sector, especially the pork industry, with sustainability initiatives. So thank you for having me.
Perfect. And Alexandra?
Yes, thank you so much. First time joining the podcast, so I appreciate the opportunity. My name is Alexandria Shannon. I'm the Senior Product Manager for Grants, Credits, and Incentives Software at Tax.com Ryan. My background originally is in public affairs and corporate communications. I fell into software development gladly, and I come from a small town in Ontario called Tavistock. So it's nice to be able to marry those small town roots with software development that is helping my agricultural community.
Excellent. Well, I'm very happy to have you both on the show today. So let's get started with the first question about the funding portal solution. So can you tell us what it is and how it benefits the Canadian pork producers?
Absolutely. So the funding portal was really a project born out of or is a brainchild between the CPC and our team after we really identified that there's a massive gap between the actual funding that is allocated through, that non-dilutive, non-repayable grants and the actual recipients of the ultimate intended funding wallet. So, in order to bridge that gap, the CPC and Ryan came together to develop really two systems. Number one is called the Fund Search. It's an easy to use digital tool that was designed for the pork producers and processors to find, apply for, and then secure government funding by matching their projects to the right programs. It really took the guesswork out of the funding journey by providing more personalized matches for those grants if it's of interest, loans, and then tax incentives based on specific project eligibility. So that's number one. And then to complement the fund search, we developed the incentives management system. So that was created specifically for the pork provincial organizations, or the PPOs, to help manage the multiple member profiles and projects, and to develop more funding analytics to guide their members through that journey as well. So the two tools work together. They do speak to each other to streamline the funding opportunities for producers, while providing PPO teams with the insights they need to better support their members in the long term.
And just to add to Alex's point, is that the funding search tool empowers producers by providing access to over 4,600 Canadian funding programs, allowing them to find opportunities for infrastructure, innovation, and different sustainability investments. Whereas already mentioned, the IMS system supports PPOs more as an extended arm. Um, with opportunities at the regional or organizational level where they are able to align with producer needs and deliver targeted funding guidance. And again, together, these two tools do address some of the most emerging concerns of production, including the production costs, market pressures, allowing producers to enhance productivity, adopt to innovative technologies, and remain competitive.
Excellent. So, what exactly inspired the Canadian Pork Council to develop this initiative? And how does it align with your broader sustainability goals?
And this is a very interesting question because there are two important segments. Ensuring sustainability in the pork industry does require knowledge transfer about best management practices. While educating producers on best management practice is an essential first step, there's more to it. So it must be paired with the necessary investment to implement these practices effectively and ensure long-term sustainable production. Adopting best management practices often requires transitioning to modern farming methods, integrating advanced technologies, and making improvements in these areas like animal welfare, soil health, water management, and energy efficiency. However, these changes come with upfront costs that can be significant for producers. Without proper financial support, unfortunately, the adoption of BMP may be limited only for those who can afford the investment. So, this actually leaves many producers unable to participate in fully sustainable initiatives. Now, the second factor is that CPC recognized that global shifts in the pork industry are reshaping the competitive landscape. You have countries like Brazil, Spain, and Mexico who are taking significant leaps, securing dominance in major markets. In response, CPC, together with Ryan, identified that we need to have an urgent need to provide Canadian producers with some type of tools to stay competitive. This is why we developed the Fund Search Initiative that directly supports these efforts by addressing challenges, related to rising input costs, evolving global requirements, and increasing the demand for sustainable practices. Because at the end of the day, staying competitive is no longer just about production volumes. It's about integrating sustainability on farm practices, modernizing operations, and meeting the international and domestic market demands and expectations.
Absolutely. And this is going to be such an amazing tool because like I remember actually looking at some of the funding available myself when I was working on an energy reduction book, and it was hard to get an overview of everything that's available in the different provinces, etc. So like what types of funding opportunities can producers like expect to find through the portal, and like how can they access them?
So the funding portal is powered by an advanced system in the background, where we ingest all of this, complex data coming from over 187,000 feeds at the federal, provincial, and then municipal levels as well. So producers are then able to access all the grants, loans, and tax incentives that are supporting areas like infrastructure development, biosecurity upgrades, and those innovative practices that, to Katerina's point, ensure a competitive marketplace for them to continue to grow. So, some of the examples that I often use are provincial funding under SCAP. It's one of the largest ag programs currently. There's 567 million in Ontario alone, followed by 508 million, on the table for Alberta ag organizations. This program in particular has multiple streams of funding that's focused on market expansion, risk management, and sustainability. I also just want to call out to Katerina's point. I mean, expanding our, quote unquote common understanding of the definition of sustainability is so critical, especially for the pork industry. Just moving, past that narrow scope of environmental sustainability, and making sure that we're talking about it in terms of farm productivity, animal health and welfare, and then obviously the competitive advantages for long-term growth. So that's a long-winded answer to your question, but we take a lot of the available government data, and we've developed a tool to narrow all of those big program opportunities down that often feel very overwhelming and are overwhelming, to match projects to the right funding programs. So it's less about the volume, and more about getting the right programs in front of the right organizations to qualify for.
And when you ask the question on how they can access the funding portal, and this is, we try to make it easier. And I think Ryan was a great support with this. We actually managed to create the funding portal under the existing CPC member portal. We have a lot of producers who are already active through our members portal. So we just provided the options. When they log in with their existing credentials, they can access the funding portal already. However, if they require additional support, producers can definitely, through the tool, access Ryan's services again, with regards to writing assistance and so forth. And of course, this is additional service that Ryan is providing with some additional fee. However, with regards to the funding opportunities and all the inventory of what is available for producers, we can provide that support through the CPC member portal and the funding portal tools.
Okay, excellent. So, how does the funding portal solutions contribute to advancing sustainability in the pork industry, like especially on-farm practices?
Sustainability is the buzzword, isn't it? And such an important one,
Yes.
honestly, because sustainability includes, again, enhancing on-farm management practices, adopting new technologies, and I'm going to actually focus on that in particular, adopting new technologies. That alone can be quite daunting, when we're seeking, a very straightforward project description, to support those new advancements and integrations, automations. The funding portal solutions are helping producers access funding to invest in these critical areas to offset, to Katerina's earlier point, those large upfront costs. So while the initial costs of sustainability projects can be high, the Fund Search tool provides producers with the financial support to implement changes that deliver both economic and environmental benefits.
And again, we need to be clear that, I am quite aware that in Canada, especially with the government that we had in place, there has been a lot of highlight towards environmental sustainability. However, especially for the pork industry, since we're so export-oriented industry, sustainability is more, let's understand it from a competitive perspective. As Alex mentioned, how we can improve on farm production that benefits all aspects of the production, including animal health, welfare, biosecurity, risk management, you name it. Everything is sort of a component of sustainability. And this is why producers will have a great benefit of having access to those funding programs, because it provides support with regards to on farm technologies, precision feeding systems, energy efficient equipment, that everything that actually aligns with sustainability goals. And again, financial barriers to innovation are a problem, because once you have sufficient investment support, you're able to invest in cutting edge tools like automated feeding systems, precision monitoring technologies, and energy efficient infrastructure. The point being is that you save and have value add to your production, so you can ensure that long sustainable production of the farm itself, or the process, or the whole industry itself.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, what advice would you give to pork producers who may feel overwhelmed by the process of applying for funding?
So yes, this is actually how the idea came to develop the funding portal solution with Ryan. Back in the day, I think 2 years ago, when we started with this sustainability initiative, we did a lot of consultation with provinces, with the PPOs, and with the producers, where we even had a survey asking producers with regards to how much information they know regarding funding programs or access to different investment support programs. Very, the number came quite low. Kudos to those provinces who are quite engaged with their producers, supporting them with project application and finding funding and investment support. But there are different provinces and a lot of other provinces who do not have the skills or capacities to do so. And again, the problem is not only with producers. When I started looking and searching through application, oh my God, the funding to find something that you actually need is overwhelming. Imagine if you're a producer, you know, you are faced with complex eligibility criteria, extensive paperwork, tight deadlines, and many producers are already managing busy operations, so navigating funding landscapes might be just an added burden. And we said, let's just find a support. And Ryan, was there, Alex with her team, that helped us to simplify this process and make it more accessible. And then, making it user friendly to approach and reduce administrative barriers and save valuable time.
Yeah, I think that's a great synopsis, Katerina, and a nice overview of how like this started. It genuinely was organic to solve a problem. I know a couple weeks ago you had Cassandra on from the Ontario Pork team, and I understand that she has just recently taken over, or is in the process of taking over, her family's farm. And I think that that's in of itself a great example of long-term multi-generational sustainability. And so my advice would be to define projects that consistently invest in those farming practices that are moving with those commercial demands and also enhancements. So by identifying a project and making sure that the actual need is very detailed, that would be my advice. I often say that governments don't fund businesses, they fund projects. So being very specific about the goal, improving infrastructure, adopting new technologies, or expanding operations. We really developed the Fund Search tool to simplify this by consolidating all those funding opportunities and providing, again, those personalized matches. I think I've said that once before. If I were to compare it to anything else, it's like the Expedia for grants, right? Producers are able to log in to the CPC platform, enter in 14 pieces of information about their operations, how long they've been operational, the size, what they're looking to actually achieve, and then be matched with the top 20 funding programs. We really are trying to take the guesswork out of getting the right funding in front of the right projects.
Wow, that sounds really good. And like it's interesting that you say like it's the Expedia of funding, because like now like as you would describe it, I have a better understanding of like what it looks like once you go into the software. So like that's really interesting. So have you already seen a lot of uptake on this? Have there been a lot of people already using the platform?
We are seeing uptake. I think any type of new resource, it's almost a slow burn, right? So while we are seeing a lot of engagement, we want to keep encouraging producers to keep coming back. And I think that is another key takeaway is performing one search once in a while can be helpful, but with the amount of funding programs that are consistently opening, closing, being announced, keeping track of those programs are ultimately what we're here to help them with. So definitely encourage both the producers and processors to come back to use the fund search, keep using it. And then also for our PPOs, to reach out, and for those who have already started using the incentives management system, to keep those searches coming. We have all the bandwidth in the world available.
And I think one of the benefits that this tool provides is that once you're logged into the funding portal, the producers will get messages and emails on the available funding coming out, new or more funding being topped out. So they will be in tune with everything that is happening. In case, for example, there is a program that is closed, they will get a message that there is a new opening or more funding is available. So they don't really have to like sit down and go through all the websites and search if there's anything available or open.
Oh, that's excellent because there is a lot of changes. Like there's constantly new grants coming, and like you say, others are closing. So that is very good to know that they'll be able to get those messages and they don't have to constantly check themselves. Like that's going to be a big time saver for sure.
Absolutely.
Anything else you would like to share with our listeners today?
Well, I would like just to close the discussion that, and then provide advice that producers or the provinces should not be afraid of the complexity, and that should not stop them from exploring different funding opportunities. Again, CPC is committed to provide tools and resources together with Ryan to empower producers to reduce the workload and make accessing funding as straightforward as possible. Again, we will also appreciate engagement. If they see that some parts of the funding portal is not properly, addressing their needs, we're more than happy to get that information and try to work around it that makes it more user friendly for them. Because again, we are creating first time for the industry tool like this, and we will benefit any type of support that, will again at the end of the day provide value add to the producers or the PPOs.
If people have questions, do they go directly to you, Katerina, or is there someone else within CPC that is better suited to answer these questions?
The way how we created the funding portal, and this is thanks to Alex and her team, is that once you're in, you can definitely, if you're having questions with regards to the technical matters of sustainability or the topics that are technical for producers, you can definitely reach out to the team that is working at CPC on sustainability matters. If you have more technical issues with regards to granting, with regards to application processes or the funding portal itself, how it functions, you address those questions to Alex and her team.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you so much for like both of you coming on to the show and talking about this great new tool. So, to our listeners, if you're enjoying this episode of the Swine Canada podcast show presented by Wisenetics, please remember to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends and family.
It's time for our famous three. Swine Veterinary Partners comprises 4 well-established clinics across Canada. Precision Veterinary Services, Premier SHP, Demeter, Ontario, and Demeter, Quebec.
So now we'll be ready for the final 3 questions. The first one is, what is your favorite swine-related book or resource? And that it can be anything that you use for to find swine information.
So, somebody who's working for the pork industry, I must say that I do read a lot of online research journals, and I think I find that information and research quite beneficial. And especially I'm going back using European information, research information, and I'm going back using Canadian or United States and then making the comparison. I think that's quite a beneficial. But again, reading a lot of online newsletters is also quite an informational resource, and it's user friendly because they pop up quite easily and the information is easy to digest. So different resources are beneficial for different purposes, I must say.
Definitely. And then, do you have a favorite book or resource outside of agriculture?
Well, somebody who has 2 small kids, I don't really have the time to read. I'm usually stuck on Baby Shark, but recently I started reading The Reason I Jump, and it's a book written by an autistic young man from his perspective of how he sees the world. And I think in this changing society, that's beneficial to understand others' priorities and needs and how we sort of integrate them into the society.
Oh, definitely. And maybe, Alexandria, do you have a book or resource outside of agriculture that you really like?
I do. I have a couple on the go. I don't have kids, so I would say I have the luxury of leisurely reading. So, uh, uh, I right now I actually just finished a book written by Mike Myers called Canada. It is a love letter to the Canadian population, and really interesting to see how a Canadian, who moved abroad, views our country again. So, one of the things that he very much focuses on in his book is how obsessive Canadians can be about statistics, which I definitely relate to. But I'm grateful for all of the resources, both in ag and outside of ag, that are available to organizations and businesses like Funding Portal and the CPC, that we can distill down and then really provide those insights back to organizations like the Pork Council members.
Excellent. And I am going to ask if maybe you've thought of something in the meantime, like in your opinion, what sets successful swine professionals apart from those that are not? And it can be really anything.
Well, I think management. It's if you are able to manage your farm, that's great. But I think we live in a society where you need to manage people. And that's a huge component. Even if you're a farmer, you have workers. So providing that, labor is a huge matter to on-farm management. So being a good manager, I think, brings a huge value to the industry and that long-term sustainability that we have been talking about.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for coming on the show. So that concludes another episode of the Swine Canada podcast show presented by Wisenetics. So thank you for joining us today. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast to stay updated on future episodes. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review. Your feedback is invaluable to us. Until next time, this is Miranda Smit from the Swine Canada podcast show signing off.